slideshow. Okay, great. Can everyone see my slide? Because I can't see anyone.
Yes.
We can.
Okay, great. Well, thanks, Caleb, for that introduction. I really appreciate it. It's an honor for me to kick off the 2021 Rose and Robe Breastfeeding and Equity Summit, Reckoning with Resilience. I love that theme. My talk is going to be on men and mental health. So just to review the objectives for my presentation. I want to learn the prevalence of mental health conditions in the African American community. Learn the challenges of getting men to accept treatment for mental health conditions. Debate the difference between mental health and mental illness, and learn the importance of self-care and self-care techniques in the prevention and treatment of mental health conditions. And lastly, learn the symptoms of mental health that require immediate intervention. So why at a breastfeeding equity summit, we are starting off with a talk about men and mental health? Well, this gentleman sums it up, Bill Richardson. I know all of you remember Bill Richardson, 30th governor of Mexico. You know, he's some other things, U.S. ambassador to the United Nations. He was the energy secretary under Clinton. And at one point, he even ran for president. But I want to focus on what he said in 1994 when he was in Congress, when Congress was formally creating Men's Health Week. And Representative Richardson said, recognizing and preventing men's health problems is not just a man's issue. Because of its impact on wives, mothers, daughters, and sisters, men's health is truly a family issue. And I think we should add men's mental health is more than just a family issue. It is a community issue. Black Americans are 20% more likely to experience serious mental health problems than the general population. Therefore, mental health is a significant issue in the Black community. Let's talk about mental health in the Black community. Is it a surprise that a significant percentage of African Americans have mental health issues? I say the answer is no. With rates of poverty, unemployment, and violence in African American communities, we should expect to see a significant number of mental health issues within the African American community. And tag on institutional racism, I'd say it's a miracle that all Black people in America are not on some type of medication for their mental health. I really like this slide. I stole it from another presentation. I put the reference at the bottom of the slide. Encourage you to look this up. It's a very interesting presentation. But this slide says a lot. This slide, it illustrates something that's hard for some people to understand. Some say slavery occurred over 200 years ago. We can just stop and move on and quit blaming the problems of Black people on slavery. Well, no. When the people have been enslaved for generations, for some 250 years, the impact of that just doesn't go away after a few generations. And if you look at this slide, you'll realize that it won't be until I think the year 2150 before Black Americans will be free the equal amount of time that they were enslaved. Ladies and gentlemen, I don't think any of us today will be alive to see that monumental day. And so this idea that, oh, it's all in the past, y'all should move on, it doesn't make sense. It really doesn't fit with current scientific understanding of what happens to generations in the impact of trauma. Now, some scholars in this area have proposed a term, post-traumatic slavery syndrome. Trust me, you will never see this in the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual. It'll never make it. But many people argue that this explains a number of things that we struggle with in the Black community. And they describe post-traumatic slavery syndrome as a set of behaviors, beliefs, and actions associated with or related to multi-generational trauma experienced by African Americans that include, but not limited to, undiagnosed and untreated post-traumatic stress disorder in enslaved Africans and their descendants. Pretty thought-provoking. There are some Black psychologists will take you deep into the understanding of this. And I just say this is one of many accounts for the emotional challenges of the African-American community. Now, the point to be made that we cannot ignore all these factors because they impact the mental health of everyone, and particularly minority groups and African-Americans in general. This is a poster that's in the public domain, NIH poster, just sort of showing why that each of these areas are important in a community's mental health. Now, Black men in mental health. Okay, let's see if I can start my video. No. So Black men in mental health. Let's talk about that for a minute. So psychosocial and socioeconomic challenges faced by Black men can negatively impact their pride, their self-esteem, their sense of being a strong man, but it all impacts their mental health. And the magnitude of this psychological distress, it's hard to measure because we don't know. There are some statistics that go out there, but for reality, we really don't know because it's often silent. And by silent, I mean it's not recognized as a mental health problem. So Black men are more frequently undiagnosed, underdiagnosed, untreated, undertreated for their mental health problems. And that's when they end up coming to see someone like myself. I'm a forensic psychiatrist, as Caleb mentioned in my intro, which means nobody comes to see me because they want to. People come to see me because they are told they have to. So, mental health in America, I took this quote from communityvoices.org. I have the reference at the bottom there. I think it sums things up very nicely. It says, poverty, racism, and the impact of past trauma, particularly violence, are major contributing factors of mental health disorders in African Americans, especially African American men. And by the way, in the mail yesterday, I kid you not, I got this in the mail yesterday, the American Journal of Psychiatry, the editorial. As a field, we need to prioritize critical social and environmental factors that impact individuals' well-being and mental health. The degree of trauma and stress associated with structural racism, socioeconomic deprivation, and stigma of mental illness is immersed. It is important to recognize and admit that in the past, the American Psychiatric Association exposed racist views that were directly damaging and contribute to structural racism. Ladies and gentlemen, the July edition of the American Journal of Psychiatry. What a turnaround. Just to say a little bit about this, you know, the American psychiatric community didn't always view African Americans in a favorable way. So Benjamin Rush, the only physician to sign the Declaration of Independence, he's considered the father of psychiatry. And for years, up until maybe about 10 years ago, it was his image that was on the seal of the American Psychiatric Association. He was an abolitionist. He also owned a slave, but he was an abolitionist. And he had a warm heart for African Americans. He was trying to understand them. And he realized that Blacks had a condition that he called negritude. Negritude was what Black people had. It's like leprosy, but a milder form of leprosy. But it was his opinion that explained a lot of the stereotypes that people had about African Americans. It wasn't their fault. They have negritude. And to make matters even more exciting, Dr. Samuel Cartwright, if you really want to get upset with life, just Google Dr. Samuel Cartwright, I'm sorry. He was a physician that practiced in Louisiana, Mississippi, eventually was in the Confederate Army. And he had some unique observations that he published. And he realized that slaves had a condition called drapetomania. Drapetomania. It's a condition of slaves that causes them to run away. Obviously, it's the mental illness, because why else would they do that? Why would they leave their plantation where everything is provided for them, master cares for them? Obviously, they're mentally ill. And so Dr. Cartwright was trying to reassure plantation owners that this is a curable thing. Don't think badly of your runaway slaves. This is curable. The best cure is lashings, is whippings. Just whip them. And apparently he had a number of case reports to show how this whipping cured this drapetomania and stopped slaves from running away. It worked so well, he even implied that slave owners should prophylactically whip their slaves so they don't catch this and run away. He also had the scientific publication for Dysfunctional Behaviors. Oh yes, it's all in Greek. It's a fancy word. It's why Black people are lazy. And he knew it was just genetic because he had seen this not only in slaves, but in Negroes who were never enslaved and living free, especially if they're allowed to live free in groups. And so this was the leadership of psychiatry at the time. What a turnaround from 2021 when the American Journal of Psychiatry is actually acknowledging the role of racism in mental health. All right, let me get to it. Back to the talk of the day. Many African Americans, especially men, underestimate the impact of mental health conditions on their health, their loved ones, and their careers. In the Black community, many may misunderstand what a mental health condition is. It's not a weakness. God is not punishing you. The devil is not tormenting you. You don't have roots. You probably have a mental health condition. We need to talk openly about mental health. And there are different reasons why men, and Black men in particular, are less likely to talk about their mental health problems. Again, they think it reflects weakness, it reveals a vulnerability. In some ways it does. We just don't want to talk about it, period. I said I don't want to talk about it, period. Got it, back off. It can be hard and awkward to talk about. And men don't always realize they have an issue. They tend to blame other people or other things outside of themselves that's pushing them over the edge. I don't have a problem, Doc. Everybody else does. Let me tell you this quick case report of a problem. Guy was having problems at home. He was having problems on the job. Finally, the boss calls him in, gives him a mental health fitness for duty form, and tells him, don't come back until you get an okay from the doctor. Well, he shows up in my office pissed because he doesn't need to be seeing a psychiatrist. That's absolutely nothing wrong with him. And this brother spent about 30 minutes blaming everybody but the Lord Jesus for the problems he had. And at one point, I just had to take my Sigmund Freud doll off the desk and put it in the drawer, put my pad down, and said, look, it's not that your boss is an a-hole. It's not that the women you work with are female dogs, to use a different term. It's not that your wife is histrionic. It's not that the kid has ADHD. The only common denominator is you. Well, he spent the next 30 minutes telling me what an idiot I was, but we got through it. We got through it. We finally were able to get him back to work, and things got to the point where I thought that we could stop the weekly sessions. And I told him we were going to let his employer know this. He says, what are you talking about, Doc? Stop my therapy? This is the best I've been in a while. And so I'm thinking he's going to tell me what a great therapist I am and blah, 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 which is why he's doing so well. But he said, you know, ever since I've been in therapy, the people at work have been real nice to me because they know I'm in therapy. They treat me with kid gloves. I don't have any problems. They don't want to mess with my therapy. I get to come in late every Tuesday. I don't come in until after lunch on Tuesday because they know I have therapy in the morning and they want to be sure I'm okay after my therapy. He says, my wife is even being nice to me and making sure the kid doesn't get on my nerves. Why should I stop therapy? This is great. I'm going to ride this out as long as I can. Well, once I pick my ego up off the floor, I realized that, whatever works, works. But there are times when the purpose of therapy is to have the individual recognize what their stresses are, how to cope, and to move forward. I recommend if you get a chance to look up communityvoices.org. They put out a report of Souls of Black Men. It was a sort of a survey of African-American men discussing their mental health. And this is one of the quotes from that paper. Mental health is taboo for African-American men. In general, there's a strong stigma associated with mental health problems and illness. Issues related to culture, masculinity, and social, political environment keeps men from tackling problems related to mental health. Interesting amount of work. That's just one of the captions from that work. So at your leisure, I encourage you to look at their website. I think you'll find it enlightening. So why Black men do not go to mental health therapy? Stigma, seen as a weakness, character flaw. We come with some of their pride, feel we can deal with it on our own. And one dude actually told me he was allergic to therapy. I said, what does that mean? He said, it makes me worse. Okay, well, how does it make you worse? I told you it makes me worse. Got it, dude. All right. That's the last thing we want to do is make you worse. Maybe we can talk about how we got to this point. When you're dealing with men, especially Black men, sometimes you have to use techniques that they don't teach at the university. You have to sometimes put the Sigmund Freud doll in the desk drawer and adjust your approach to deal with the brother in the room. And that could be a challenge because many African Americans believe mental health counseling was designed by and for white people. And the fact of the matter is, there are not a lot of African American mental health providers. Only 2% of psychiatrists, 2% of psychologists, and only 4% of social workers are African American. So what is mental health? And I'm trying to make sure I don't get us off track too far here. Mental health is more than just the absence of mental illness. It's essential to your overall health and quality of life. Mental health includes emotional, psychological, and social well-being, affects how you feel, think, act, make choices, affects your ability to work, go to school, maintain relationships, and your cardinal abilities. I'll let the lawyer on the line explain cardinal abilities, but this is important to men. Self-care plays a role in maintaining mental health and helps you recover if you're dealing with mental health issues. Let's talk a little bit about self-care. Get regular exercise. Nothing I'm going to show on this slide is going to be a surprise. Just grouping it together to make the point. Self-care is important. Regular exercise, eat healthy, stay hydrated, make sleep a priority. Underline that because I underestimated how important that was. So even for me, I realize I have a lot better tolerance, feel a lot better about dealing with the certain stresses of the day if I'm well rested. Don't ignore the importance of sleep. Set goals and priorities, focus on the positivity. Remember what your grandparents used to say, no matter how bad something was, you can say, let's just praise the Lord, it could have been worse. In some ways, that is also helpful to your mental health. Try to stick on the positive, don't dwell on the negative, but do set goals and prioritize things that need to be fixed. Stay connected, be brief with a trusted confidant. Just talking about it can make a big difference. Talk about it to someone you trust and know when to remove yourself from stressful situations. Brothers, don't knock it until you try it. it works. And the good thing is nobody needs to know you have resorted to prayer and meditation to help you through the stresses of your life. There is not anyone of any credibility that will tell you neither one of these things work. And sometimes they work when nothing else does. And we all know the power of prayer and the role of religion in the Black community. It's real. Don't ignore it. Do what works for you. So, brothers, I know this is a sensitive topic for you guys, and I know you all don't have mental health problems. And we've already identified that Black people don't have mental health problems. So let's look at dysfunctional behaviors that can occur when you have unhealthy mental health. Oops. Substance abuse, domestic abuse, child abuse, impaired work performance, impaired impulse control. Sometimes we don't always frame these type of things as dysfunctional behaviors that may be the manifestation of an unhealthy mental health condition. Men may be more amenable to this type of a framework. Not mentally ill. Okay, you say you don't have a mental health problem, but this behavior that we're seeing is dysfunctional. It's not helpful. This is not the behavior of a mature, emotionally stable man. That may get the brother's attention because we know there are consequences if these things aren't addressed. And sometimes those consequences end up with you coming to see somebody like me, whether you want to or not. Nip it in the bud before it becomes a crisis. There are consequences to not taking care of your mental health. I want to tell you a story about a surgeon very quickly who, surgeons have personalities to begin with. This guy just started having so many problems, the chief of staff suspended him. And he had to go get a mental health evaluation to come back. And he was just livid. The audacity of those people to suspend me, all I've done for this hospital. And he just went on and on and on. He embarrassed the chief executive officer, on and on, how stupid they are. And I had to just make it plain to him. There's no need for me to debate any of the things that you're saying. They're probably true. As far as you're concerned, they're true. So that's all that's important. But you are a role model in this community, and the way you are behaving is not consistent with a positive role model. Well, he spent another 15 minutes telling me what a quack I was, but we got through it. We were able to get him settled down. He's back in the OR. Life is good. The point I want to make, a lot of these things, if they are recognized and addressed, they can be addressed before they become a crisis. Moving quickly, what is mental illness? Now, I want to make a distinction between what I call mental health and then what I call mental illness. So mental illness occurs when a person's mental health deteriorates to a point where there are significant impairments in a person's ability to function. This is a serious medical condition and usually requires treatment by a mental health professional. It's not your fault. It's a medical condition. And I'm talking about things like major depression, severe anxiety and panic disorders, severe mood swings such as bipolar disorder, bizarre behavior of thinking that you can see in schizophrenic disorders. These are medical conditions that are unlikely to get better without the assistance of a mental health professional. Do not delay. So, in wrapping up and keeping on time, I want to just emphasize you should seek consultation if self-care does not work for you, or you're experiencing any of these symptoms, even with self-care. Difficulty sleeping, appetite changes, struggling to get out of bed, difficulty concentrating, problems at work, loss of interest in things, inability to perform usually daily functions and responsibilities. Seek some consultation. Don't wait until the symptoms are overwhelming. Seek immediate professional consultation. If you or others notice any of the following, and notice I'm saying you or others, because sometimes it's not obvious to the person. Anger, irritability, aggressiveness, noticeable mood swings, feeling on edge, alcohol or drug abuse, suicidal thoughts, hold it there, trouble feeling positive emotions, engaging in high-risk activities, unusual thinking or behaviors. Don't wait. Contact somebody, let them know these are the things that you or others are saying you're experiencing, and don't let it get out of control. So my take-home points: on time, 5 minutes late. Do not ignore signs of a deteriorating mental health condition in yourself or others. Mental health issues may not be obvious to the person struggling with a mental health crisis or a mental illness. Intervene before it becomes a crisis. Don't wait until symptoms are overwhelming. Self-care is important. It was an honor for me to start off our your conference this year, talking about men and mental health. I think I'm left a little bit of time for questionings, but again, thank you for your attention. Am I supposed to do anything else, Caleb?
No, I think that's good on our end. We'll all thank Dr. Risby in the chat as we can, and we'll take questions online to the chat, so you can post questions, and we'll get them to Dr. Risby afterwards, so we can move on with the agenda. You can also post questions through the WOVA app as well. Thank you, Dr. Risby.
It's my pleasure. Thank you.